You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio. Welcome to the Bitter Medicine Podcast, where it's all about Black empowerment. Our show focuses on Black news and entertainment, arts, science, economics, history, people, and strategies that uplift, empower, and motivate Africans within the diaspora. And now, your host, whose favorite color is black, Goku.
Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. This is your host, Koku. I apologize for being late. As soon as I went to start the stream, of course the computer restarts on me, and then I had to configure everything once it restarted. I want to thank you guys for joining me. If you're here with me live, let me know that you're here live with me, so that I know that I have folks to interact with during the course of the show. Today we're going to be discussing regaining our African aesthetics and essence through our African traditional religion. I just want to remind you guys that this show is a part of a podcast network called KWAZ Radio. You guys should be tuning in to other shows on the network, like...
This is DAX. You tune into the Harsh Reality Podcast, providing you with social commentary on the news affecting our community, only on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the Pro-Black Perspective, where Black problems are addressed with Black solutions.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Alright, and also check out the Queen's Council podcast. They just dropped another new episode recently. Check out the Queen's Council podcast as well. In the chat room, I see some familiar faces. If you happen to know my government name, it should go without saying, don't post my government name. And if you're a moderator and you see my government name posted, please take that down. But thanks for being here. I appreciate you guys for tuning in to the show. I see NYC Beauties is here, H God is here, and a few other folks are here with us. So, I appreciate you guys. I hope you guys stick around, enjoy the show. Do I sound well? Am I coming through loud and clear? Do I sound good? Let me know if I'm loud and clear. I did a video the other day, a rant about Coming to America 2, and it was kind of echoey, still listenable but echoey. Let me know if I'm coming through loud and clear. All right, so you already see the title, Regain Our African Aesthetics and Essence Through Our African Traditional Religion. And this paper is by GIBREEL M. KAMARA of North Carolina A&T State University. All right, Kevin Care42 is in the room. He says I'm coming through clear. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So let's get into the paper. In this abstract, it says, it is true that any religion and culture are involved in each other, and that it is often difficult to draw a precise line of demarcation between the two, if that is ever possible, especially in places where people still consider life as an indivisible stage of artificially dividing reality into the sacred and the secular. What was the religious positions of Africans before foreign cultures rudely interrupted us and made things fall apart? What were the African moral codes that governed social constructs and human behavior? On the face of the present anarchy that engulfs the African continent, African people all over the world must address these questions and other related ones, especially with respect to sub-Saharan Africa. Indeed, there are those who believe that African people had absolutely no concept of God before the advent of the different forms of colonialism. Quote, there have been writers on African society who have maintained the belief in a supreme God is due to the influence of a hierarchical society, and that God is nothing more than a glorified chief or ancestor. End of quote. That was by Parinder in 1976. What is even more ludicrous is that even at the dawn of the 21st century, there are still those who relentlessly argue that Africans do not have a philosophy worthy of consideration because of one frivolous reason or the other. The fact of the matter is that Africans have always had religion and philosophical thought patterns. The manifestations of African religion and philosophy are no doubt different from those of other peoples, but difference does not translate to absence or non-existence. I make no claim of being an expert in either philosophy, religion per se, or African traditional religion. Thus, my definition of religion that follows is informed by a reflection of my boyhood memories of the ritual practices of the elders of my hometown, Rockpur, especially my late grandmother, Yanaba Kamara, and the way they lived their lives. Yabu, a shorter version of Yabana, could not read or write in any language. Therefore, she had no direct access to any of the two holy books of the two dominating alien religions in Sierra Leone, Islam and Christianity. All the same, Yabu was just as religious as any pope, Dalai Lama, Ayatollah, or any other living or dead religious leader ever known to mankind. By religious here, I closely follow Idul's 1975 definition, an individual who professes a certain faith and observes certain rituals. So that's the basis of religious that we're talking about here. From the things Yabu did and said, I come to the definition of African traditional religion as the observance of rules of conduct in the way the individual conducts his or her daily life, the practice of rituals, and the recognition of the ever-presence of the living dead or the ancestors, to allow the person to coexist in harmony with other members of the community and nature in order to please Pa Kuru, short for Pa Kuru Ma Saba, the Thamne word for God. From this perspective, it is therefore not surprising when Mbidi in 1970 stipulates that Africans are notoriously religious. Religion permeates into all the departments of life, so full that it's not easy or possible always to isolate it. This brings to bear the epigraph at the beginning of this article, which somewhat also opposes the separation of religion and culture of the individual. Furthermore, Mbidi in 1970 points out that traditional African religion, quote, is an ontological phenomenon. It pertains to the question of existence or being. The individual is immersed in a religious participation which starts from his birth and continues after his death. For him, therefore, and for the larger community of which he is a part, to live is to be caught in a religious drama. This is fundamental, for it means that man lives in a religious universe. Both that world and practically all his activities in it are seen and experienced through a religious understanding and meaning. In essence, according to Mbidi, and the way my grandmother and the other elders of my hometown lived, to be African is to be religious. To be alive is to be religious. And to be religious is to work toward the enhancement of the community to please the Supreme Creator. So a question occurs here. from your observation or prior or even current participation in the Abrahamic religions, do you see practitioners working toward the enhancement of the community to please whatever supreme creator they believe in? Do you see Abrahamic religious observers really working toward the enhancement of the community? Right, in your neck of the woods, in the chat room, I see a lot of activity. Kevin K42 says, just want to say Meghan Markle thought she was just going to forget her black side and marry in Muzungu, so-called royalty. Now she is paying the price. NYC Beauty goes on to say, like, share, comment, and subscribe. That's absolutely correct. If you're here today, like the video. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. Also click the bell to be notified when I'm on or when I upload new content. NYC Beauty also says, help promote the positive education and messages of this podcast. I appreciate the kind words, NYC Beauty. Black Excellence says, outsider religion has destroyed the African native spirituality. Islam and Christianity is worse than any addictive drugs in the African diaspora worldwide. KW Dawn is here, everyone. KW Dawn is in the chat room and says to Kevin K42, Meghan Markle is a multiracial female married to a neo-Nazi. She married into a crime family whose very being and wealth is built on the enslavement of our ancestors. NYC Beauty says to that Black Excellence, truth. Outside of religion is nothing more than a cancer. Kevin K42 says to KW Don 7, on point. Muzungu royal family are playing shocked. They forgot their crime history and destruction of the black family. Yeah, I don't think they forgot. But, you know, they're definitely playing shocked. And as for Meghan Markle, you know, she got what she paid for. You know, and my thing about it is, look, I've been watching Meghan Markle for a while. She was on a show I used to like a lot. And before that, she used to be on game shows. She was a game show, like one of the swimsuit girls on a game show type thing. And I've noticed, and I've noticed that she doesn't look, I mean, to be real honest with you, there's something to her. You could see there's some background of that's not all white. But at the same time, if you look at her and the roles that she's played on film, she's played those roles really as a white woman. And so that's how I see her. I see her as a white woman. And I don't like people being black, especially being a black woman, when it's convenient. You know, like, to be honest, no one's tripping on Meghan Markle like that in the black community until she starts talking about blackness and blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, yesterday I was so fed up with Twitter, where folks was talking all day about the royal family on Twitter. It's just ridiculous. You know? So that's my little take on Meghan Markle. Maybe we'll talk about it a little bit later in the show, but Meghan Markle paid for what she is getting. And that's my take on it. KW Don 7 says the Abrahamic religions have alienated Africans from their own consciousness. I'll go a step further and say that the Abrahamic religions have made black people insane. Absolutely insane. Most people I know that are religious, I mean really, really religious, not just religious on Sunday, are insane. I've told this story before. I'm sure some of you have probably seen it. Watching one of those kind of crime networks back in the day, and two black guys were picked up by some white dudes and taken out into the countryside. This is down south somewhere. Beaten badly. They brought one of the black guys back. I think one they let go so that he could go and tell people what happened. The other one they brought back and hung him from a tree in front of his parents' house. In the courtroom, this white boy is pretending to be, you know, sad, and says to the mother, I hope one day you can forgive me. And this religious woman says, son, I already forgive you. And I'm like, we're insane. This religious thing has us insane. Right? So that's how I view the Abrahamic religions in the face of black folks. It has us insane, and in a lot of ways it has us not really doing anything for our community, because it pushes this belief that your reward is in a different place. Don't worry about the trials and tribulations here. Have faith. Your reward is after you die. And I'm sorry, I cannot accept that. I cannot accept that I sit down here and get my ass whooped, right? I'm just waiting to die before I can actually live, you know, a good life. Nah. To continue the paper, long before Yabu died in 1975, Islam and Christianity had already had their holy grip on the sub-Saharan region. Certainly a few people can argue against the positive influences of Islam and Christianity on the continent. However, we must never forget that these religions have served and continue to serve as the entropies of our traditional religions and thought. Islam and Christianity have so well succeeded in obnubilating the minds of Africans that most Africans even today have absolutely no qualms about objurgating the religions of our ancestors. Herein lies our demise. See, the way he wrote that had you worried for a second. Herein lies our demise. I saw someone, I don't know if it was the pro-black perspective on Twitter, I saw someone retweet a dude and this dude was on some stuff like, thank God for, like, you know, religion or Christianity or something like that, or, you know, even Islam. Thank God for that. Else I would have been in Africa, you know, walking around naked. And that's 2021. That's in 2021. And a thing that we have to really understand too is that these religious folks, these Abrahamic religious Africans, make up most of the Africans available. So if you, and you know, and this goes to why I say sometimes we got to rethink some of the things we think and say. If you X out to the religious, you X out the street dudes, because street dudes ain't about shit. They just like the religious. Right? They don't care about nothing that's really going on. Right? You X out the misogynists. Well, damn, there's only going to be about, you know, the 6 or 7 or 8 of us here on the podcast. It will just be us here in the chat room. Right? If you X out all these different groups that are, to me, anti-African, there'll be about those of us here, the Pro-Black Perspective, D-Web, the Harsh Reality Podcast, the Queen's Council. That'll be probably it. It's a problem. And we got to learn a way to deal with our problem. In the chat room, I see that these the Black Excellence, shout out to Black Excellence. Black Excellence says these religions are means of submission. Forgive and forget. The hell with that. I agree. H. God says, wow. Black Excellence says, look at how the Arabs treat black people in the Middle East and how the Muzungu Christian treat black people. I thought these religions were about equality. You see, that's, you know, I think I had this talk on the show a couple weeks back. But that was my issue with a African on a basketball court one time. You know, a lot of those Arabs and stuff who Islamized African folks, some of those folks were the ones going in and assisting Arabs in getting our people and enslaving them in the Arab slave trade before the European slave trade. And some of them did it again during the European slave trade. And the thing that a lot of these guys said when they did that, it's Allah's will. Go ahead and it's Allah's will. How many of you guys watched the Malcolm X documentary on Netflix? I think it's called The Killing or the Murder of Malcolm X or something like that. How many of you watched that? There's a couple episodes to it. And one of the things that stood out to me about that is, again, religious zealotry. Some fools thought Malcolm insulted their holy apostle, and so it was cool for him to get gunned down and murdered. And it was cool for everyone to kind of sit around knowing who the murderers were, knowing that one of the main guys was right there living in Newark, New Jersey. You had these coward imams and whatnot who didn't want to talk about the guy. How many of you saw that? If you saw it, let me know what your thoughts were about that in the chat room. I'll read it out live on air. Right? But a lot of that religion stuff opens you up to say, well, it's God's will. Enslave them. Okay, it's fine. That's what God wants, and so be. I cannot be cool with people like that. And I cannot be cool with people who sit up and, you know, talking about the Most High and all this type of stuff. And when you look at what works they're doing, there's no works. You know, it's people, you know, getting high and all this kind of stuff. And what are you really doing? What are you organizing? And anyway. Of all the people of the world, African people, especially those of us south of the Sahara, are the only ones who have totally abandoned the religions of our ancestors, thereby rejecting the values, beliefs, customs, norms, and traditions of our lineage. And you know, that's an important statement right there. As we've done on this show, you know, we've talked about the communalism of Africans traditionally. And when you abandon the idea of I am because we are, for example, right, which is what these religions bring. These religions are a Trojan horse for individualism. Well, if I live right, then I will get a mansion, right? I will get a mansion in this house of the Lord and blah, blah, blah. And that's what these religions bring into the people. This is how you destroy people, right? This is how you destroy African people. Because like it's been established, African people were always religious. You go back to ancient Egypt, you know that African people were always religious. Well, so what our enemies did was come in with more religion and found a way to scare Africans into following that religion. If you've ever been burnt by a stove before, imagine what a lake of fire will feel like. And these guys then was able to tell them, well, if you want to be a part of this religion, you got to give up that other stuff you were doing before. There's only one way to the Father, right? So when we gave up this idea, you know, our traditions, we became individualistic. And that right now is the primary downfall of our people. We fall in the individualistic mindset of our enemy. The Jews have Judaism, Europeans and some Middle Easterns have Christianity, Arabs have Islam, Indians have Hinduism and Orientals have Buddhism. Each of these belief systems is laced with its own cultural orientations. Each believes in the same Pakaru, that Yabu worship, and each is to a very large extent different in its practices. Indeed, some members within a given culture embrace alien religions. For example, there are Indians that believe in Christianity and Islam. Some Europeans practice Islam and Judaism. Some Arabs and Jews adopt other religions other than their own. Generally, only a minute fraction of the members of these cultures practice something other than their national cultural religions. Unfortunately, Africans are Christians, Muslims, and everything else but something akin to their Africanness. For those very few who practice African traditional religion, we do so in secrecy to avoid embarrassment. I mean, listen to that. Let me read that again. Unfortunately, Africans are Christians, Muslims, and everything else but something akin to our own Africanness. For those very few who practice African traditional religion, we do so in secrecy to avoid embarrassment. Imagine you have to be embarrassed with your relationship to your creator. We've lost our minds. We are crazy people out here. We perceive our African religions as being inferior to others because we have internalized that African traditional religions are mediocre. This brings me to the subject of this article. In the chat room, Black Excellence says, look at how the Arabs treat black people in the Middle East and how the Mzungu Christians treat black people. I thought these religions were about equality. Black Excellence goes on and said, look up the Arab Tipu Tip. African people, H. God says African people were spiritual first before religious. There's a difference. Right. In this paper, they keep referring it to as African traditional religions, when historically we usually say African traditional spirituality. And there is a difference. All right. NYC Beauty says, to me, when I was a freshman in college, I was on academic probation. I was in trouble and worried. This Christian woman, an upperclassman, instead of helping me, gave me a damn Bible. I looked in her eyes and she looked lost. She looked like that Christianity took away her soul. Well, I can tell you, when I was in college, there was a cult on campus that called itself, a Christian group. And I can tell you that a lot of those people were lost souls. Just lost. Empty. Right? Because at the end of the day, really and truly, your relationship with a creator, if there's any rules involved, which there shouldn't be many, the rules should be towards keeping up the community, keeping up the people around you that make up the community. Right? If you look at like the Medjugorje, I'm sorry, not the Medjugorje. If you look at the Ma'at, right? If you look at Ma'at, you'll see where most of those rules were about keeping yourself in a certain way so that the community prospers, right? In fact, while I'm here, let me look up something right now. I have a nice graphic for Ma'at, and it's on the Discord. If you want, you guys can go onto the Discord and check it out. I'm pretty sure I have it on the Discord. I'm gonna post a link to the Discord now so you guys could join. You guys could join the Discord with that link I just posted. Like Black Excellence just said, like, share, and subscribe, folks. If you haven't already, click the bell. Once you subscribe, click the bell to be notified when I'm on. Right? And click the bell to be notified when I'm on, so that when I upload content, because I'm not always live, sometimes I actually just upload content, and you guys could be notified when it comes out. But when you look at Ma'at, right, it's the ancient Egyptian concept of truth, balance, order, harmony, right, law, morality, and justice, right? And so the idea was about keeping the group together, doing the things that uplift the group. But when I look at the Abrahamic religious folks, I don't see that. And I definitely, I definitely don't see those actions, is what I should say. There's a lot of laws, do not do this, do not do that. And of course, people still do this and still do that, right? But to me, a way of life, a spirituality, a spiritual system like what ancient Africans had, if we're really talking about getting back to that aesthetic, right, would mean that I wouldn't do you no harm. I wouldn't glorify the streets. The streets would be alien to how we move, right? I wouldn't be a misogynist, etc., etc., etc. And so we got to get back to that. But this idea that Africans, black folks, have internalized African traditional religions or spiritualities as mediocre is the subject of this article, essentially. My contention in this article is that the present predicament in which Africa and we Africans find ourselves has a lot to do with the forsaking of our African traditional religion and thoughts. The senseless wars in Africa, the shattered economies, the ingrained, accepted, and admired corruption of our political leaders, and the total neglect of our aesthetics in dance, music, and especially literature, to name a few, are a direct result of our lack of adherence to our African heritage. Unless there is an immediate turnaround toward reaffirming, practicing, and living our lives according to our African religion, problems of the continent will only get worse. So someone who hears me say that will say, the naysayers would say, well, there's a lot of countries and a lot of spiritual systems, what have you, in Africa. And to that I say, follow the laws of Ma'at, and you would be following a traditional African spirituality, which most of them follow anyway. Most of them follow Ma'at. The need for us Africans to return to the way of life of our ancestors borders on the fact that Islamic, Christian cosmologies and ontologies are antithetical to African traditional religion. A brief examination of Islam and Christianity in the area of the concept of Allah or God or Supreme Creator in terms of his relationship with human beings and the idea of the Day of Judgment will illustrate how the Africans' proclivity to Islam and Christianity has innovated our moral consciousness to the degree of moral turpitude. Let me hasten to point out that I am not trying to impute any motives. I'm not in any way suggesting that Christianity or Islam or any other religion for that matter breeds immorality amongst its believers, be they original believers or converts. the contrary, I applaud any religion that preaches on the existence of one universal creator, regardless of whether he goes by the name of Jesus, Allah, or Pa-Kura. Furthermore, had it not been for the presence of religion, including Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, the sense of immorality that permeates our society would have gotten worse. In essence, religions of all kinds help to shape our values and morals and allow people in societies to live in harmony among themselves and their maker. So I'm going to pause here and say, this kowtowing thing he's doing here, I really hate when black folks do that. I will agree and say that, listen, as much as I'm not into the Abrahamic or European religions, I will say that had it not been for those religions, there'll be a lot more bad stuff going on. Let me tell y'all something. There's people walking around out here talking about Jesus Christ and stuff. If you took that away from them, they'll bust your throat. They'll end you out here, honestly, if you took that away from them. The problem, though, is not, if Europeans and folks want to believe in that stuff, that's fine. Go ahead. The problem is that that's something designed for them, by them, and for them. We are not following what's designed and for us. And that's really the issue. We are not following what's designed and for us. As Kevin K in the chat room said, what's good for Arabs is not great for Africans. That's exactly it. You have to choose the things that naturally resonates with you. Kevin K says, if you look at the history of Arabia before Islam, there was separation and wars amongst these people. Islam united them. What's good for Arabs is not great for Africans. Islam and Christianity equals dogma. African spirituality is pragmatism, absolutely. Kevin K goes on to say, remember, Allah was a pagan god pre-Islam. Allah was a moon god. Kevin K goes on to say, African spirituality equals a black code of conduct. And that's the point. And that should be the point of this paper. You get back to black spirituality, you get back to your morals, your ethics, your overall code of how to carry yourself, how to carry the community. Right? Kevin K finishes all by saying, stop following the spook in the sky. However, I do not believe in one universal religion. I do not believe that African traditional religion is for Europeans, Jews, Indians, or Asians. Amen, brother. Amen, Ra, brother. By the same token, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, and Buddhism are not for Africans. For the Africans, especially the ones born and raised in the continent, African traditional religion is our religion. I don't know why you put that in there, but okay, no doubt some Africans convert to other religions for one reason or the other, but we never completely alienated ourselves from our traditional beliefs, particularly in moments of crisis. Consequently, we find ourselves torn between opposing religious orientations, the adopted religion, Islam or Christianity, and African traditional religion. These divided loyalties leave Africans to profess or dismiss one religion or the other whenever it is expedient. Because of the cosmologies or the ontologies of the religions, because the cosmologies and ontologies of the religions are different, Islam or Christianity versus African traditional religion, as I will soon explain, we find ourselves in a religious clash that brings about the moral decay for which I alluded to in the preceding paragraph. You know, we talked about this last week sometime, where you have Africans getting married and they'll do a traditional African wedding and then go down by a church and wear a white dress and all this old dumb shit. And my thing is, like, first of all, you're wasting time, right? Second of all, I think your African spirituality was enough. your African marriage was enough. Where God or Allah is concerned, the differences between Muslims and Christians are enormous. However, they both preach that God created human beings for the express purpose of serving him. As an inducement, he created heaven to reward those who live according to his covenants and hell for those who renege, just so everybody eventually goes to heaven. Allah in his merciful self provides a way out for the sinners in the name of repentance. In other words, those who own up to their evil actions can ask him for forgiveness, and God will let them into his kingdom and share his glory with them. I gotta be real with y'all. I've always found that logic to be silly, right? I've always found that logic to be silly. That I'm talking specifically about, and I had this conversation with a staunch Christian back in the day, and they argued me heavily. Only for a couple of years ago, I spoke to them, like recently, I spoke to them, and they completely changed their viewpoint, and it mirrors mine. So you're telling me you could be some dictator somewhere, slaughter an ethnic group, right? And in your dying hour, you could ask for forgiveness, and you could be in heaven. I saw a joke the other day that said, imagine walking into heaven and you hear someone says, you got to be fucking kidding me. Right? Imagine you walk into heaven and some voice outside, you got to be fucking kidding. Like, imagine someone who, because they've done the worst things on earth, but in their dying hour, they ask for forgiveness, and there they are, in the good place. Just unbelievable stuff for me. It never resonated well with me. However, this reward and punishment system will not occur until the day of judgment, thousands or perhaps millions of years from now, when everyone in this world may die. On this day, God will raise all the dead and ask them to account for their deeds on earth. Herein lies the problem. For most people, this delayed judgment, and thus delayed reward and punishment, gives them a window of opportunity to give in to temptation and commit sins much more easily, because after all, they simply need to confess their sins and God will forgive them. And right there, the author is making a good point. Right? And he's making my point too, which is there's no way, right, with the way these religions are set up, there's no way you're looking up for your community. In your mind, you could be the biggest bad man walking around Brooklyn, right? You could be a quote-unquote gunner, right? A dude who they go and get and pay to go and shoot up a place or shoot someone and kill him. And in your dying moment, you just say, but I'm sorry. It just never gels with me. Let me check in with the chat room. Let me see if that ever gelled with any of you. NYC Beauty says, black people follow these religions from front to back. Arabs and Muzungus not so. I knew a Muslim from Egypt. I was right next to him when he told his fellow friends about drinking vodka at a wedding. Another time I saw two Saudi nationals entering a bar. My friend has a bouncer there. He said this happens more often than not. Yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff is just bullshit. But why they practice it is because it's a form of being organized, right? If you're in Islam, right, you're Muslim, oftentimes Arab, if not Arab, you're Arabized, right? And so you're part of their organization. Should something come up, you guys squad up as an organization. The problem with Christianity is Christianity doesn't squad up for anything, right? And the problem with Islam is that Islam and Judaism is that they don't really check for black observers of those religions. Look at the Beta Israel, the Ethiopian Jews who were in Israel. Look how they were getting handled, right? So these guys still bring their prejudices into it, right? But those really groups for organizing their folks, right? Perhaps this is why a great number of Africans who avow Christianity or Islam hardly see anything wrong in committing such cardinal sins as robbery, rape, incest, murder, and a host of many others. For example, according to the news media, more than 1.5 million Africans have suffered death from the hands of other Africans in Liberia, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, and Somalia within the past 5 years. And many others have suffered and continue to suffer untold horrors. It is unbelievable that the aggressors in all these killings and atrocities believe in religions that have as their first commandment, quote unquote, thou shalt not kill. Will such people receive forgiveness by simply going to a priest and confessing their actions, as in the case of Catholics? Will Allah, God, welcome them into his kingdom if after many years of doing evil, sinful things, they eventually surrender their lives to serving him before death makes a date with them? The answers to both questions are in the affirmative, as I suspect they are. Perhaps it is about time we Africans return to the religions of our forefathers and foremothers. Of course, this is not to insinuate that African traditional religion is better than either Islam or Christianity. Again, a limp-wristed response. Right? And I get what he's saying, but still a limp-wristed response. Look, even in African spiritualities, you might have some folks doing some nonsense, because there's a certain percentage of humans who will just do nonsense, right? But it's more than just where you hope to end up at the end. It's really about your community. You shouldn't, if what you're following doesn't do anything to uplift and bring up your community, bring about power, it's just foolishness at that point. Conceivably, it has something within itself that will directly enable us to easily uphold its moral codes, because African traditional religion is tailored for African people. Our failure to replace Christianity and Islam with African traditional religion will basically encumber our society and bring to fruition Kuneni's 1980 prediction, when he posits that, quote unquote, each society is concerned with its destiny within the cosmic arena. Without this perspective, the society can be stampeded into directions it does not fully comprehend or does not feel ready to follow. Believing in something requires a person to understand that something, and to live by its codes, right? Christianity and Islam are peaceful, loving religions with ethical codes that restrain humans from sinful acts. Why then do we African converts to these religions neglect the tenets of our adopted faiths? Kuneni's 1980 assertion above responds to this question. Perhaps these religions are not within the cosmic arena of the African. How do you guys feel about Kuneni's assertion that perhaps these religions are not within the cosmic arena of the African? In the chat room, Kevin Kerr says, if you think about it, black people are the real moral people. Remember, religion is one main reason that Ireland is split into two. Yep. That's a huge reason why. Right? But you guys, let me know what you think about Kuneni's 1980 assertion, which states that within the cosmic arena of the African, these religions are outside of it. Let me take a quick station ID break, and on the other side, we'll discuss your responses as well as continue the paper.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
This is DAX. You tune into the Harsh Reality Podcast, providing you with social commentary on the news affecting our community, only on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the pro-black perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Also check out the Queen's Council and all those shows on KWAZ Radio. By the way, check out KWAZ Radio's YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe. Click the bell on that channel to be notified of any new events, snippets or clips of shows on the network. So make sure y'all head over there and like that channel as well. Black Excellence says a lot of the old school rappers spoke more truth than any of these religions. NYC Beauty says that religion is about control. NYC Beauty also says, isn't Andrew Cuomo a Catholic? I think he is. Yeah. Right. But that's an important message in there, that religion is control, right? Spirituality is order. And the thing that we got to work on in our community is order. And, you know, there's an old saying that says if you do the same thing over and over and expect a different result, right? If you do the same thing over and over and over, getting the same results but expecting something different to happen, you're insane. And that's why I come to say religion is insanity. For the amount of being quote unquote prayed up, right? And asking to be washed in the blood of this and all of that old shit. Not much is really changing for our folks. And I'll tell you something. Because of how this white man's religion pushes the punishment, most of our people are too afraid of this white man's and this white man's God's punishment. Like I said earlier, if you've ever been burned by a candle or a cigarette or something like that, stove, unpleasant feeling. And to scare people into eternal burning is one of the greatest rewards they could have come up back in medieval days, back in old times. And our people are still afraid of it. Listen, if you believe in a creator, then the creator should believe in you too. You're supposed to understand that you are of the creator. You have the ability to destroy and build anew. You have the ability to create. It's your duty then to fight against anyone who would have you be less than, subhuman, chattel. It's your duty. And if your belief system that's tied to the creator doesn't get that response out of you, you got to get rid of that belief system. It's not connecting you to your creator. You don't have that spirit of the creator within you. To continue. African traditional religion holds the key to the sanity. Remember I kept saying, this is our people crazy, to the sanity of our society. Because it is a religion we intuitively understand. It has no chance of being misinterpreted. After all, Mbidi in 1970 reminds us religion in African societies is written not on paper, but in people's hearts, minds, oral history, rituals, and religious personages, like the priests, rainmakers, officiating elders, and even kings. Every day is a religious carrier. Therefore, we have to study not only the beliefs concerning God, the spirits, but also the religious journey of the individual from birth to after physical death. We have to study the person responsible for formal rituals and ceremonies. What people do is motivated by what they believe. And what they believe springs from what they do and experience. So then belief and action in African traditional society cannot be separated. They belong to a single whole. And that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. We belong to a single whole. Right? W-H-O-L-E. Right? Your belief has to have action. You can't separate it. So this is why the Arab, the Islamized and Christianized folks believe, well, you just take it, you know, it's life, you deal with it, right? We all end up in the grave, and afterwards, great will be your reward. While we eating good over here and living it up and creating abundance for ourselves, y'all suffer, right? We'll live it up. But in the end, we'll meet up in the afterlife. It's madness. In the chat room, Black Excellence says a lot of the old school rappers spoke more true. Yeah, I read that before. Kevin K42 says when the missionaries came to Africa and gave the African a Bible and told him to pray, when the African finished praying, his land was gone and all he had was that useless Bible. Yeah, that's the whole Jomo Kenyatta point, right? These guys came with Bibles and guns and left with land. And all you had was the Bible. They left with land and guns. All you had was the Bible. And you know, this is a great lesson too for children to understand. It's a great lesson for children to understand. I think most parents try to give them that lesson. Look, if you like candy, someone could lure you into a place and destroy you because of your like of candy. This is why you can't let people understand you too heavy. And definitely if they understand you, you can't let them be around you, because then they have the ability to take advantage of it. And that's why, you know, I talk about from time to time the childlike mentality of African folks. And I hate to say it, but that's what it is. We have this childlike ethics and morality. We can't believe that these folks believe in God and do the things that they do to us. And we keep doing that same insane thing over and over and over and expect something different. Wake up. These folks ain't praying, P-R-A-Y-I-N-G. These folks are praying, P-R-E-Y-I-N-G. Clearly, African traditional religion involves, as the saying goes, mind, body, and soul of the Africans who must, by the nature of our beliefs, practice what we preach. So what are these beliefs that constitute African traditional religion? African traditional religious ontology consists of 5 components. Right? There are belief in God, belief in the divinities, belief in spirits, belief in the ancestors, and the practice of magic and medicine. As for Mbidi in 1970, there are the beliefs in God, spirits, man, animals, and plants, and quote-unquote phenomena and objects without biological life. Regardless of the configuration that one takes, what is certain is that this religious thought system unequivocally recognizes the existence of God, or Pa-Kuru, to whom everything is subordinated. Furthermore, African traditional religion compels us to revere our ancestors, sometimes referred to as the living dead, because of the station they occupy in the scheme of things. Quote, in African paradise live the spirits of the ancestors. Since they are closer to the supreme creator than the living, their responsibility is to act as intermediaries who carry the pleas of the living to the creator. Right? Which is something that a lot, these Christians don't talk about, but the Catholic Church stole that idea. Right? They put that in the Nicene Creed. Right? The veneration of the saints, which is essentially the ancestors. Also, this religion does not conceive the end of the world, for the concept of time within African cosmology does not. Also, this religion does not conceive the end of the world, but the concept of time within African cosmology does not. So Africans don't see an end of the world, right? And Beatty maintains allow such speculations. Let me read that again. Also, this religion does not conceive the end of the world, but the concept of time within African cosmology does not, and Beatty maintains, allow such speculations. These three tenets, God, ancestors, and a never-ending world, are fundamental in African traditional religion because of the influence they exert on human behavior. Crazy question. Not necessarily a religious question either. Do you guys believe in the end of the world? Right? And I don't mean that really from a religious standpoint. I just want to know, do you guys in the chat room listening live, or you guys listening to the playback, you can comment also, do you guys believe that the world will end? As in the case of all religions, African traditional religion operates on moral codes that the followers must abide by to ensure a just and amicable society. To believe in these codes, Africans know that fail to live accordingly guarantees punishment from Pa, Peru. Consequently, he is held in the highest esteem because he created planet Earth with all the things therein. For the pleasure of human beings, we owe him. For that, we pour libations and make sacrifices to him, so that he will continue to nourish the earth for us. Maintaining good morals pleases Pakaru very much, and it is believed in many African societies that their morals were given to them by God from the very beginning. Right? This provides an unchallenged authority for the morals. It also believed or thought that some of the departed and the spirits keep watch over people to make sure that they observe the moral laws and are punished when they break them deliberately or knowingly. This additional belief strengthens the authority of the morals. If you guys wish, you can go check out, I think I have it in the bookshelf, the Bitter Medicine Library. This book, let me just refresh my memory. There's this ancient African book. What's the book again? I'm drawing a blank for a second. Give me 1 second. The Maxims of Ptahhotep. Right? The Maxims of Ptahhotep. That's a book. You can go on our Discord and click the link I posted earlier in the chat room. And you could go in that book. It's an ancient literary book composed by Ptahhotep that gives a good picture of like what the general attitude of the the period was, what the moral codes were, right? How to live according to Ma'at, you know, and that's what we, you know, if you want, you should read that book to get an idea of what African societies believed from the very beginning. In the chat room, I see NYC Beauty says, I'm sorry, Kevin K42 says religion is nothing more than gentrification of spirituality. The universe is indefinite. I'm sorry, the universe is infinite, cannot end, just like there's no real beginning. I agree with that too. World without end, right? Kevin Care says it just is. The world just is. Listen, you can have events that can change some stuff, you know. If we understand correctly, there were dinosaurs that were killed off when a meteor hit the earth, blocked out the sun, the ash blocked out the sun, and they died off. You could have events, but the world will still keep pushing, trust me. We have these movies, like I saw one recently, or I fell asleep on this movie recently, that deals with like a frozen earth type scenario again. You know, but people, you know, life will still keep pushing. Life is life. It just is. You can't stop it. KW7 says something interesting that I agree with too. I pray for the end of Urugu's world. Kevin Kerr says he seconds that. NYC Beauty says facts. Kevin Kerr 42 says religion is like putting a circle in a square. Europeans always want to quantify everything, right? Listen, I'm not here to tell you what to believe in. Oh, I'm not here to tell you exactly what to believe in. But I am here to tell you that if you've been doing something for generations, I remember seeing Polite say this in a video, right? And it was emotional for him too, because he was talking about like people who died. My mom came and died. My auntie had cancer. She came and died. And so it was real powerful. He was talking to a Muslim guy too. It was like, you know, your God has to be an asshole. If you made me in your image and then you send me to the bad place for doing stuff and I'm made in your image and you're an asshole. You mean you sat down and you sat through the Arab slavery. You sat through the European slavery. You sat through Jim Crow and redlining and lynchings. And you never found it necessary to return and help the people who were supposed to be made in your image? Now this by the way, is you know, is why I believe in what I believe in terms of the energy of creation. I talked about that before. I won't talk about it here again. All right. But briefly, I believe that there's an energy that passed through this part of space, created the spark, the creation of things in this place. We have you know, some spark of that energy, so that makes us connected to it. But this energy is not something that hears your cries, listens to what you have to say. It's gone on through space now, sparking creation in other places. It is what it is. If there was this being who sat through and was cool with all this stuff that happened, I just can't see it. Then that being is an asshole. To continue the paper, this provides an unchallenged authority for the morals. It's believed or thought that some of the departed and the spirits keep watch over people to make sure that they observe the moral laws and are punished when they break them deliberately or knowingly. This additional belief strengthens the authority of the morals. Given the foregoing discussion on morality and ancestral reverence, African traditional religion unmistakably influences our behavior. Therefore, a person's propensity to partake in any act that is morally wrong or evil is usually tempered by the fear of offending his or her ancestors. Now, let's break that down for a second. Let me tell you something. I know my ancestors. I know my ancestors. Right? I was raised by my grandparents. Those are my ancestors. I grew up knowing certain aunts and uncles, family members who have passed on. Those are my ancestors. Right? If anyone's going to look out for me in this real world, if anyone between two worlds, between life and death, who can look out for me, are those people. And those people knew their grandparents before me. And so forth and so on. That's my connection. Those are my aunts. No, some I don't know. And the ones who know me, I'm sure, will speak on my behalf. Will wish me the best. And if possible, will do the works from where they are that will help me in this place, that will speak to me in my dreams and give me guidance. I see some of my ancestors sometimes, right? How many of you had good relationships with your ancestors and believe that if anyone's going to do anything for you, it will be those ancestors? Is there anyone else who has that belief here today? Black Excellence says, one thing about these outside religions is that they are about money and conquest and nothing positive. Kevin K42 says the universe is ever expanding. Creation is continuing. The creation that passed through this part of the universe that ultimately led to us, that thing has moved on elsewhere. It's not something sitting around listening to your cries. You have life. You have the spirit of creation in you. You also have the spirit of destruction. Go out there and make some shit happen. Go make something happen. And this is what the preachers in the pulpit should be talking about every Sunday. Go out there and make something happen. To continue, there are many things held to be morally wrong and evil, such as robbery, murder, rape, telling lies, stealing, being cruel, saying bad words, showing disrespect, practicing sorcery or witchcraft, interfering with public rights, backbiting, being lazy or greedy or selfish, making promises, and so on. More than anything else, the practitioners of this religion are fully aware of the immediate retribution that follows any evil action. Ray in 1976 says, Ray in 1976 reminds us that where African traditional religion is concerned, well, there is little speculation about last things. That is, about the nature of the afterlife or about immortality or final judgment, for there are no last things toward which human life is headed. There's no vision of a culminating end to individual lives or to human history. This worrying about what happens when you're done, and you have to be worried about where you go, and nah. What you got to do is prepare yourself in life to be a better ancestor. Because honestly, in my opinion, that's why some of us don't get that cosmic guidance that we should be getting. A lot of our ancestors oftentimes weren't shit here, and they ain't shit where they are. be better in life to be better in the afterlife. The absence of the perception of a day of judgment in the Africans' religious thought underlines the importance and authority of the ancestors. To remain free of their anger and the immediate retributions thereof, we must follow those aspects of the moral codes that please them, the ancestors. The belief is that rewards and punishment are dispensed within a relatively short period of time with the commission of an act. Unlike Christian and Islamic teachings that give a person an extended time to repent his or her sins, African traditional religion gives very little or no time for expiation of one's sins, particularly the very serious ones. It is this conviction of immediate retribution that helps in shaping the individual's behavior that allows him or her to live in harmony with both nature and members of the community that defines his or her experience. It's high time we understood that the locus of our African humanity, civility, decorum, peace, good government, economic viability, aesthetics, compassion, and freedom resides in African traditional religion. How many of you agree with that? How many of you agree with that list that was just listed, right? That African traditional religion encompasses. It is a religion with a creator who speaks our languages, speaks to our minds and hears and listens and understands our ancestors as they intercede on our behalf. It is the religion that privileges the community over the individual and teaches us to cherish human life. Above all, this religion is the only religion that addresses the sum total of our Africanness. Certainly, this is not to say that Islam and Christianity, which Africans practice today, do not provide for these needs. These religions have taken and continue to take away from the Africans much more than they have given. They are giving or will ever give. Santi's 1989 assertion that, quote, the most crippling effect of Islam as well as Christianity for us may well be the adoption of non-African customs and behaviors, some of which are in direct conflict with our traditional values. It's very much on the mark. I will add that these religions, in fact, have also made Africans become ashamed of our African languages, and thus our customs, beliefs, traditions, and values. It is a well-known fact that there are some Africans living in America, Europe, and Africa who are ashamed to speak the African language in public. It is also common knowledge among continental Africans that some of these Africans not even consider a serious relationship with another African who speaks a European language with a strong African accent, whatever that means. Clearly, this is the machinations of our Christian and Islamic education, whose success in making us Christians and Muslims depended on the extirpation of our African cosmography. Yeah, I gotta say, I like how this writer has been posing this discussion so far. I know for a lot of you in the chat room, you're familiar with, see, it says I was disconnected for a second there. Can you guys hear me? If not, refresh and you should be able to pick me up. But yeah, I'd like to know, what are your thoughts about getting through to our folks, right? And getting them to understand the silliness of being religious, especially religious when it comes to this European philosophy. As I'm talking, I'm trying to find an image as well for the family to post up at the end of the reading, and I cannot find it, of course. Okay, I think I found it. Yeah, so I'll read the chat in a second. I just want to know, right? What did you guys think is the way for us to go, right? In terms of getting others off of the BS, right? And doing the things that we're supposed to do, right? To change what's going on with us in life. Bear with me as I try to get this thing to show up, and it's not doing what it's supposed to do. It's all good. I'll find a different way to do it. In the chat room, I think Kevin Kerr has posted quite a few things. Kevin Kerr says, NYC Beauty says, my ancestors are the reason why I'm here. I thank and adore them. Kevin Kerr 42 says, I don't trust Preacher Porkchop. He's too busy trying to shag the sisters. Okay. Kevin Kerr also says, you ever notice when you look at old European churches, they have these demonic statues around? Yeah, that's a common thing to see in their artwork around the churches. To see what is, what most people can consider wickedness, right? They saw hell where they lived. Kevin Kerr goes on to say it was unholy to bathe back in the dark ages of Europe. Shout out to the bubonic plague. Oh man, I like that kind of humor. Shout out to the bubonic plague. Kevin Kerr 42 says, when they came to Africa, they found heaven. Food grew everywhere. Yeah, Kevin Kerr says, YouTube is messing with your stream. Yeah, I figured that. I hope you guys refresh. And if you can hear me now, let me know that you can hear me now in the chat room. All right. But Black Excellence says, a lot of our folks are long lost. It is messy to try and convince them that religion is bad. I guess it's messy. Right? Okay. So I found that picture, and I'll show it at the end. Let's continue with the reading. If you can still hear me, let me know you can still hear me. All right? Because I know that they did something with the stream a second ago. And you might have to reset. You might have to refresh the stream. All right. Consider, for example, the following observation that Asante in 1989 makes. The Organization of Islam has been effective not because of any more special relationship to God than any other people, but because of the genius of its early leaders. Consider the factors which have contributed to the ever-powering submissiveness of Africans and other non-Arabs to the culture and religion of the Arabs. First, the language of God is said to be Arabic. Secondly, the pilgrimage must be made to Mecca. Thirdly, to pray effectively, one must turn his or her head toward Mecca. Fourthly, Muhammad is said to be the last and most important prophet. Fifthly, certain Arabizing customs are looked upon as valuable and significant. For example, change of name to an Arab name, Arab clothes, and female subordination, to name a few. Now, I know why my grandmother, Yabu, used to call me or Jibi, probably because she could not bring herself to pronounce my Arabic name, GIBREEL, which Imam Basi, my father, gave to me. I guess naming me by any of the many available Thamne names, such as Bampia or Thamba or Santiji or Capra would have made it impossible for Allah to love me all the same. Religion and culture are interconnected, if not one and the same. Considering that Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are all products of the same geographical location, Middle East, Jerusalem and Mecca, Medina, and that they all regard Abraham as the father of their religions, why then are they so different that these differences pit them against one another? The fact is that although they all believe in the same supreme creator, their cultures are different, and thus so are their languages. Allah revealed himself to Muhammad using the Arabic language, and to Moses and Christ using Hebrew. Can one imagine if Allah, or God, had spoken to Moses, Christ, and Muhammad in Thamne, or Hausa, or Zulu, or Swahili? Or better still, suppose Islam were revealed to my grandfather, Pa Santiji Kamara, and he has succeeded in making all Thamnes accept him as the prophet of the Creator, sent to the whole world as the one and only true prophet. Suppose also that Prophet Pa Santiji had gone to Saudi Arabia and had asked the Arabs there to forsake their language, customs, and traditions, and to embrace the Tamil language as well as the wisdom and traditions of the Tamils. Would the Arabs have thrown away their Arabic for Tamil? The fact that the Arabs do not even accept Hebrew suggests to me that they would not have accepted Prophet Pa Santiji and his language. However, they, the Arabs, have no qualms about asking Africans to do what they will not do. Something must be seriously wrong with us. Otherwise, it is clear that we're on the wrong path. And that's a truth that's always put to us. We gotta accept our folks getting shot in the street and killed. And we gotta accept it peacefully. We got, these Arabs come and say you gotta change your name to an Arab name. Right? Change your customs to reflect Arab customs. And this is how they take you, by the way. Right? This is why we have a whole Northern Africa, right? And Northeast Africa that's mostly Arab, mostly Islamized at the very least, right? We have a problem. KW7 was saying to me a couple weeks ago, what are we going to do with these Arabs in Northern Africa? If we're trying to bring together Africa, what are we going to do with them? That's a hell of a question. These Islamized Africans will probably say it's Allah's way. It's Allah's will. So be it. It's a problem. It has been almost 800 years since Islam came to sub-Saharan Africa. Throughout this time, we continue to sink into oblivion, thereby losing our sense of self. Instead of celebrating our African essence and appreciating our way of life, we have come to hate almost everything that is significantly African about us. We need to pay attention to Waidu in 1995 when he states that contemporary African experience is marked by a certain intellectual anomaly. The African today, as a rule, lives in a cultural flux characterized by a confused interplay between an indigenous cultural heritage and a foreign cultural legacy of a colonial origin. Implicated at the deepest reaches of this cultural amalgam is the superimposition of Western conceptions of the good on African thought and conduct. The issues involved here are of the utmost existential urgency, for it may well be that many of the inabilities of contemporary African society are traceable to this circumstance. Well said. There is no longer any need for us to be confused about what is in the best interests of our Africanness. Nothing is wrong in importing attributes from another culture so long as such attributes are constant with one's cultural underpinnings. However, when such features obfuscate a person's sense of commitment to his or her heritage to the point of abandoning his or her essence, the logical line of action is to sever the ties. When you see certain black folks, for example, right, misogynists, who marry up with non-black folk, one of the first things you kind of notice is that they lose their sensibility of who they are. They speak different. They act different. They become entrenched in things that they weren't entrenched in before. You know, you lose yourself. After every one of these swirlers get beat up by a white dude who calls a nigga or something like that, they start talking about how, yeah, I felt like I was losing myself, and, you know, all this old dumb shit that, of course, you felt like you were losing yourself, and you know, you signed up for it. Cough, make a mark, right? African literature feeds from African belief systems. Whether we want to accept it or not, African literature to some extent reflects who we are, what we want to be, and how we want to be perceived. The same is true of our music, dance, sculpture, painting, philosophy. The aesthetic quality of this genre anchors on our African traditional religion, which informs us of the responsibility of the artist to his or her art and community. By the same token, our behavior toward one another is supposed to be informed by our African religion, the religion of our ancestors. With the help and guidance of our ancestors, God will redeem us from the religious bondage in which we now find ourselves. Our deliverance will not come to fruition until we totally surrender ourselves to our religion. In his book titled African Religions and Western Scholarship, P. Bitek in 1970 criticizes African Christian scholars for attempting to dress African traditional religion with borrowed robes. In a more specific case, Lo Lilong in 1986 takes Mbidi to task in his chapter, quote, Reverend Dr. John S. Mbidi is a thief of God. Wow, I gotta read that, right? For subordinating African traditional religion to Christianity. In a way, both P. Bitek and Lo Leong see our religion as being independent within its own right and worthy of the same regard as other religions. Any attempts to Islamize or Christianize African traditional religion will surely not lead us to the promised land, the land in which people have respect for human life, elders, ancestors, moral codes, honesty, and all the great qualities necessary for a viable life. That brings us to the end of the paper. What do you guys think about that paper? What do you think about that ending to the paper? What was said at the end? What are your thoughts? Let me organize this thing real quick. I want to put something up for you guys. I want to discuss it. Where is it? I want to show you guys this other image here. Let's see if I can make it fill the screen. So there's this image I have up on social media that talks about Ma'at. I want to share with you guys here, right? And when we look at the principles of Ma'at, 42 principles, this is where they cherry picked and stole the 10 Commandments from the so-called Bible. And let me tell you something. I recite this to myself every day. I have not committed sin. I have not committed robbery with violence. I have not stolen. I have not slain men or women. I have not stolen food. I have not swindled offerings. I have not stolen from God or goddess. I have not told lies. I have not carried away food. I have not cursed. That one I break all the time. I have not closed my ears to truth. I have not committed adultery. I have not made anyone cry. I have not felt sorrow without reason. Right? Meaning you live a positive life. I have not assaulted anyone. I am not deceitful. I have not stolen anyone's land. I have not been an eavesdropper. I have not falsely accused anyone. I have not been angry without reason. I have not seduced anyone's wife. I have not polluted myself. I have not terrorized anyone. I have not disobeyed the law. I have not been exclusively angry. I have not cursed God or the goddess. I have not behaved with violence. I have not caused disruption of peace. I have not acted hastily or without thought. I have not overstepped my boundaries of concern. I have not, mind your business. I have not exaggerated my words when speaking. I have not worked evil. I have not used evil thoughts, words, or deeds. I have not polluted the water. I have not spoken angrily or arrogantly. I have not cursed anyone in thought, word, or deeds. I have not placed myself on a pedestal. I have not stolen what belongs to God or goddess. I have not stolen from or disrespected the deceased. I have not taken food from a child. I have not acted with insolence. I have not destroyed property belonging to God or goddess. And when you go through those principles, right, and you look at what's going on in Black society, right, as a group, we're trampling on all 42 principles all the time. Yes, even taking food from children. So when you take in the principles and you go through in your head and your heart, you realize that these are just laws that gets a society through without casualties, right? Don't seduce my wife because, a man might kill you for that, right? And so this is what our people need to get to. One of them I read before is number 29. I have not acted hastily or without thought. And that's one of the things we don't have in our society. I talk about it every so often on this show, but I remember in the late 90s especially, you go to a club, a crowded club, and you step on the wrong dude's shoes, you could lose your life on the spot. I ain't talking about 2 weeks later. On the spot, you could have lost your life. How many of you remember that, especially those of you in New York, like NYC beauties? You could have lost your life on the spot. But if we had raised our people along these principles, a man would take a moment and think about it. Does it worth killing a man who looks like me too? Is it worth that over some shoes? Seems kind of a thing, no disrespect, but it seems like a thing a woman would do. Get hissy over some shoes and stuff. When we put these principles into perspective of our current status, our current state, we really can improve our situation. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine recently. A lot of times, Black folks, when we talk about the ills of Black society, we talk about it from a place of Black folks are the fault of everything. And I tend to be quick, to correct people about that stuff. Right? We do a lot of dumb stuff, but there's a cause. There's an underlying reason. There's a root cause of it. And we can't ignore the root cause. You can't ignore the root cause of something and only deal with the symptoms. But at the same time, while we understand the root cause of it, and in fact, I posted a tweet about it today on Twitter, right? We can't blame, white supremacy on our predicament, then glorify white supremacy by glorifying the streets, right? And then claim that we're fighting white supremacy. We cannot be fighting white supremacy if we're glorifying the streets. The only way you can fight this savage is to be principled and understand that you gotta take time with your own people. Don't overstep your boundaries. Don't be so gossipy all the time. Don't be lying all the damn time, right? Don't think of yourself as better than others and all those kinds, because all those actions ultimately lead to conflict. And our community is besieged with conflict every day. Yes, we don't want to lose sight of who sets up the plate, who serves up the circumstance, but at the same time, let's not sit around and act like there's not things that can be done in our society by us to save ourselves. Clearly, religion doesn't work. The Abrahamic religions don't work. Clearly, we got to get to something, a spirituality that resonates with us. Clearly, we got to follow some rules, some principles that resonate with us. And there you see them on the screen. Make sure to resonate with these principles on a daily basis. Make sure to have your family do the same. We can change our predicament. We got to change the way that we move through life. And once we change how we move through life amongst one another, then we can really battle this enemy of all of us. I want to thank everyone who is on the live stream tonight. It's a small channel, so it's only a few people, but I appreciate you as if it was instead of 8 people, I appreciated you like it was 8,000 people, 8 million people, right? I appreciate everyone. I'm gonna shout out some folks. NYC Beauties gets a shout out. Black Excellence, Kevin K482, who's become a mainstay in the chat room. KW Don 7, I know is here. I know he's listening, even though he might not be in the chat room too heavy tonight. H God, thanks for coming through tonight. And if I missed anyone, I apologize, but I appreciate all of you for coming through. And for those of you who came through and kept silent, still much love to you guys as well. I want to remind you guys to tune into the Queen's Council podcast. They just did a new episode, I think it was Monday night. Tune in to the Sunday Warships. Tune into the Pro Black Perspective podcast with Only Tassay, who I'm sure is around here somewhere. Tune into the Harsh Reality podcast with D Webb and El Miguel, right? And I'll be back again on what's today? Tuesday. So I'll be back again on Thursday. On Thursday, I think I might read some Proverbs. We'll see. I think I might read some Proverbs. Again, wisdom, things that we need to build our wisdom, to pass down these thoughts from our ancestors to our lineage. All right. Thank everyone for tuning in. I'll see you guys on Thursday. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, we hope you pass along our web address, bittermedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Bitter Medicine Show, Twitter, Bitter Meds, Tumblr, Bitter Meds, Instagram, Bitter Medicine.